When it comes to CAT preparation, did you follow a fixed schedule or was your schedule more flexible? Like what worked better for you? Talk about one of the trickiest part that students feel and one of your strongest suit, the VARC. So there is a common problem that students feel that they get lost in the RC passages. Like what they have learned is the in the first passage they can't relate when they are in the third passage. So how should the students approach VARC section to stay focused and maximize accuracy in this section? Hello, viewers, and welcome to yet another podcast from Skill Sapiens, where we dive into the minds of India's most dynamic young professionals and students who are redefining success on their own terms. I'm your host, Arpan, and today we have someone truly fascinating with us. Today, joining me is a man of many hats, a law graduate from Durham University, an MBA candidate from IIM Indore, a published author, a finance modeling expert, and someone who is turning heads across competitions and internships. Say hello to Ubaidullah Kazi. Ubaid, welcome to the show.
Hi, Arpan. Thank you so much for that grand introduction. Great to be here. And I mean, you did mention I'm a financial modeling expert. I mean, that's very generous of you, but I think I'm just still in my baby steps for that. I think that probably applies pretty much to everything else. But yeah, thank you so much for that overwhelming introduction.
I know your schedule is quite tough and hectic, and I really appreciate you lending your time on this Sunday afternoon for to share insights with all our viewers. So, before we dive into all things cat, let's take a moment to understand your journey. So, if you could tell us something about your background, like where did you come from, what were you doing before cat, and what really motivated you to take this exam in the first place?
So, all right, I'll try and go very quickly through my high school journey. I took science actually. The initial thought was to try and prepare for the JEE, and then some things changed, and I saw most of my seniors back in when I was studying in Bangalore, sort of apply for colleges abroad. I said maybe there's something about the opportunity that it's something different and challenging. And I didn't just want to do any BA, BSc or those sort of degrees. I wanted to try something beyond my comfort zone, and I'd always been comfortable with maths, especially calculus, up until that point. So I took a couple of courses. I even watched Suits, and actually that's pretty much what drove me towards studying law. And yeah, I mean, so that happened, and gave the LNAT because I was late to the Indian CLAT party. Decide I'll try overseas for an LLB and then try and secure a role there. Went to law school there with 3 years, but effectively two because COVID sort of snapped us up for 1 year when India was on the red list back in the second wave, the 2021 period. And yeah, I mean, things got a little difficult there in terms of recruitment, in terms of cracking any role for that matter. And so I was applying mostly for commercial legal roles at the time. I said, okay, I'll still focus on enhancing whatever knowledge I know about the law and also about my communication. I think that's probably what's come in handy later as I probably delve into my CAT journey. But yeah, things probably didn't work out the way I really wanted it to. Came back to India in 2022 after getting my LLB, and I mean, tried for a few internships here actually. So got in touch with my family friends and then asked them if they could set me up with a few legal internships in and around where I currently stay in Pune, and participated in a few. And then during one such internship, which a close friend of mine had obtained for me, I figured that okay, I'm not necessarily making the kind of progress I was hoping for, but then I feel I could be pushed for more beyond just law. So he said, one of my relatives writing the CAT, why don't you register for the exam as well? And this was around January, February 2 years ago, so 2023. And I said, all right, wouldn't it seem weird that I have an international credential for my bachelor's and then, I've come back and I'm going to pursue my master's degree here. It's usually the opposite. And yeah, I mean, I sort of got rid of that stigma eventually. I figured, what matters to me is the skills thing. And, it's not that IIMs here don't have values. It's massive if you crack the CAT exam or any other OMET too. But CAT stands out year on year. And so I said, all right, let me have a look at a couple of mock papers and things after my internship. After Ramzan, sort of, got into the grind a lot. Work, I mean, signed up with Career Launcher for in-person classes from May, and then for a good 6 months, 5 6 months, I'd go regularly to the center and religiously sort of solve all their sheets and workbook material, give a few mocks here and there, try and get that structured. And yeah, when the day came, fortunately was able to secure a 99 percentile plus. So 99.27 to be exact. Maths, again, weirdly enough, it didn't go the way I hoped it would. But the idea was to try and score beyond a certain cutoff point across all three sections rather than, necessarily looking to dominate in one just to raise your overall, raw score. And I think from there on, it's very limited interviews, but then I knew I had to make the most of whatever opportunity I got. And Indore was gracious enough. It bestowed upon me that chance that, I could demonstrate why my legal knowledge would help them, help myself when I'm on campus with them. And when that final confirmation offer came through in the mail last year around this time, it was, yeah, I mean, quite a roller coaster. Happy it ended in a positive. And it joined, and then it's been a great 1 year so far at I am Indore. And yeah, that's about where I am currently, just doing a summer internship with HOAPL Enterprises, formerly Lodha Ventures. And yeah, I mean, it is going great so far.
Thank you so much, sir, for really sharing your journey. We're really proud for that. So, when it comes to CAT preparation, did you follow a fixed schedule or was your schedule more flexible? Like, what worked better for you?
So I think let's put it this way. Since I enrolled in Career Launch, I took the 7 to 9 morning sessions, at least in the center where I went to. So I'd say that part was rather structured. I mean, those 2 hours you're solving either for VRC or for DILR or for quant. You have lectures like that. And when I'd come back, I think that's where the flexibility set in, because I think from there on, it was rather an eclectic mix of what I was doing. I'll be very honest. Some people might even throw a few brickbats at me with this, but I had a very, I wouldn't say unstructured, very unconventional, unorthodox approach towards cracking the exam. I didn't see it as, some sort of competitive exam as such. It just felt like it's supposed to be some sort of a worksheet you just get through, a 2 hour long worksheet. And, some way it has something to do, about determining your course of life. But I didn't really let that pressure come on to me. I sort of conditioned myself to, think of my entire day's routine as, I'll just solve 4 5 DILR puzzles because I like solving those puzzles, and it's something I otherwise didn't particularly do back when I was studying law. It's different. Same thing. If I'm solving a few, math questions, it wasn't because, all right, I have this exam to crack, and this thing is going to help me out when, let's say, potentially I start my B school journey wherever it was at the time. That was the thought process. I solved those, the quant questions because at one point in time in my 12th and 11th and 12th, I enjoyed solving math questions. It wasn't even back then because of the boards, and certainly even now, it wasn't because I had the cat to crack. It was just because, there's a problem and there's numbers involved, and, you perform a few operations and you get somewhere. And that sort of progress was what really pushed me, encouraged me. With VRC, it was rather natural. I wasn't too great in English back in my 12th. I really thought it was, a casual subject to go by, and they're just teaching us for the sake of it. And after my law degree, I started appreciating it more and more, because the law degree sort of helped me think about how to structure certain assumptions, and how do you channel those assumptions towards certain inferences, how do you get to certain conclusions. You want to think beyond certain perspectives, beyond the perspective of a speaker, beyond the perspective of a listener. And maybe that's something you unconventionally wouldn't get through, just your plain textbook English literature, English grammar reading. So verbal reasoning sort of went beyond, and even that felt like a DILR puzzle, but mostly English oriented. So naturally, a bit of vocabulary polishing was what was required from time to time. And within my rather unstructured day, I definitely set out some time to refer to this book by Norman Lewis called Word Power Made Easy. And on that, I'd solve 2 to 3 exercises sort of day by day, and I'd really go aggressive and all out. So I wanted to soak in as many words as I could in my lexicon, and it really helped. It paid off. I guess that's pretty much it.
That's a completely fresh perspective of your unconventional journey. I'm sure that our listeners would take a note on this. So, sir, when it comes to like when you look back to your CAT preparation, what is one thing in your preparation that you think you could have early avoided on? One mistake that you could have probably avoided?
Uh, in Never really. even if someone asked me this question probably 3 months ago, 2 months ago, even at the time of the cat cracking thing, I really don't have like a concrete answer. The truth is, whatever unconventional ways I've taken to sort of polish my you know, general skill set to solve this paper, I think there wasn't any sort of mistake that I can attribute, that I can call out and say this is something I shouldn't have done at all. But I think having said that, maybe just been a little more wise with my time. I know in my unstructured sort of approach, I was just generally building upon my acumen, but maybe somewhere around the journey, I felt like maybe I could have given a few more mocks because ultimately all of this will still culminate in me cracking the cat with a higher percentile and maybe more mocks, rather spaced out, more organized, and sessions for me to actually review the paper. I think maybe some more time spent in that would have been a little more helpful. Maybe just above a 99.4, 99.5. That could have perhaps secured a few more B school calls. So, but I guess there's no regrets. Whatever happens probably happens for the best. Through my journey, I was able to hang on to my sanity. Through my journey, I've been able to also focus on the GDPIs because people misunderstand when they want to get into the IIMs. CAT is just one part of the journey, and with every B school, there's a different weightage assigned to how you perform on the CAT. And there's also a lot other factors coming into play. How you did in your 10th, your 12th, whether you have any work experience, some value gender diversity, some value your bachelor's academic diversity. So sometimes these are pretty much beyond your control, and the best attempt people give is for their cat because that's what's lined up for them. But I decided to try and leverage in my conversations what I'd done in my 10th and 12th and bachelor's because I knew that when the time comes in the interview room, I have to ultimately go beyond what was there for my cat journey and show myself as rather someone who would be a great management student and someone who in the next 5 to 10 years could uh, demonstrate that the IIM that chose me did the right thing and helped me nurture into something great. So yeah, I mean, barely any mistakes. Probably just give a few mocks. But having said that, I'm happy I was able to focus on GDPI, perhaps a little better than most others I know.
That's a very insightful point, sir. Sir, it is said that the most predictable thing about the CAT exam is its unpredictability. So, CAT has always been considered an unpredictable exam, with students feeling a difference in their mock exams and the actual CAT experience. So, what kind of mindset should the students carry with themselves before they sign up for this exam?
That's a good question, Arpan. I mean, my mindset throughout, like as I probably just loosely iterated earlier, was that I don't want to treat this as any sort of life-defining moment, rather as a 2 hour long worksheet. But I think obviously people, I understand and acknowledge that people, come from struggling backgrounds, and this could be a big break for them. And obviously, there's a lot of familial responsibilities that bears heavy on their shoulders, and so naturally, cat is something they don't want to take with a pinch of salt. So, but having said that, I think let's say I prepared for this CAT exam in 2023 for just 6 months, starting from May till just November fag end. So I'd say you want to enjoy a process and see a little bit of progress. You want to track a bit of progress and appreciate yourself for saying that I put in maybe this much amount of time and then I was able to still get this much amount of output. And let's avoid looking at the time possibility as well. Let's just say you solved these many number of questions, you got these many right, you got these many wrong, but at the same time you learned why those X or Y number of questions you got wrong were wrong from your favor and what the actual expected answer was. I think surrounding yourself with the right kind of company also in this sense matters. But I'm not just talking about the study group with which you determine which questions are right, which questions are wrong. No, I'm saying beyond the CAT exam also. There are people, you'd find, let's say if you go to the gym regularly, or let's say you probably watch F1 races over the weekend. I happen to be an F1 fan, still following a few races now. So these are your friend circles. You get to talk to them more about what they're doing generally as well. You need to think beyond the cat as well. Like it's going to be one episode, I'd say, within your B school preparation journey, but you can't lose an essence of what you are as a person as well. And obviously that helps you beyond the cat and the GDPIs, like I mentioned, because it helps you strike those very enlightening conversations with who you're talking to, who you're meeting with. And so yeah, I mean, certain mental filters that I'd put on was, okay, I'm beyond this exam. That's one thing you can always tell yourself, like, okay, if I got this wrong, definitely I'm not going to get it wrong the next time. It's just an exam. I need to I know for a fact that one section is going to be a throw ball. And I think, as you mentioned in the question, the unpredictable factor, for me it was that in our paper I had slot 2, and it was the quant one, which sort of threw us off a bit, because or probably because I exhausted all my strength in the VARC and DILR, because I was always panicky about the DILR. After a point, I just said, DILR is also ultimately some logical puzzle. It's something to go by. Um, so I just said, I've probably dealt through more difficult stuff in my LLB. So that's something people can definitely say if they're struggling to grasp the unpredictability of the CAT exam. They can refer to some experiences in their 10th and 12th mentally, on a personal level. And anecdotally remember that my bachelor's had this experience, and at one point I didn't know about event management. At one point I didn't know about probability to that level of detail, but hey, I got through it. My bachelor's is done. That event management thing I was scared about, successfully held that fest in my college, and I got my POR for it. I'm all good for it. So yeah, you got to look at the positives of what you've accomplished also, and what you seem to be on track in. Also downplay, but not excessively downplay, what the CAT means to you, because beyond the CAT there are a lot of opportunities opening up for people. They're writing the GMAT, they're writing the GRE, they're flying overseas. They're not necessarily even doing an MBA. Right out of their bachelor's, they're focusing on networking and getting into the right places, albeit with a lower expectation of a package. But they're trying different things. They're building a personal brand, and then usually even that helps perhaps even bit more when they want to apply to the same campuses at a later stage, whether or not they do well in the CAT. So I think definitely don't put CAT in a pedestal. Just maybe think of it as a worksheet, as I did. Don't lose touch of your personality. Definitely want to do the things you enjoy, obviously in moderation in all sorts of things. Gym, oh yeah, F1 ho, jo bhi bolo. And yeah, I think just don't forget who you are. Ultimately, you want to progress as an individual more rather than as a CAT aspirant. I definitely put that there.
That's an eye opener, sir. I think a lot of listeners will relate to this. So let's talk about one of the trickiest part that students feel, and one of your strongest suit, the VARC. So there is a common problem that students feel that they get lost in the RC passages. Like what they have learned is the in the first passage they can't relate when they are in the third passage. So how should the students approach VARC section to stay focused and maximize accuracy in this section?
All right. So, for the sake of this podcast, whoever's going to listen, if this is the first time you're hearing about the CAT, then let me tell you that unlike maybe a few other management and entrance exams you might have heard of, you don't get to choose the order in which you get to attempt these sections. So, it's always the VARC that comes first, unless they decide to monumentally change the structure. You have the VARC 40 minutes, the DILR 40 minutes, and then the quant at the end. So, and the timer goes off automatically after the 40-minute mark. So VRC, obviously, whether you like it or not, that's the first section that's going to hit you. And probably like it or not, it's the RCs which are going to be the first few questions. And in my case, when I wrote it, there were 24 questions in all, distributed amongst four VRC passages. So there's approximately 4 questions per RC passage. And then the remaining 8 questions, because you have 16 questions for your RCs, the 8 questions towards the end of the section were all for VA. And my game plan at the time was to actually skip over to question number 17 all the way till 24, because those VA questions, maybe it's because English grammar for me has been really helpful at the time. I like to pay a bit more attention to details, so spotting some errors and figuring out where sentences grammatically lie. Those are sort of my strong points, I'd say, rather more than literature, in fact. So I'd start from the VA thing, and the benefit is that in the VA part of the questions, those 8 questions or so, you don't want to spend too much time. Instinctively, you just want to try and clear as many as you feel it to be correct. You don't want to spend too much time, especially on the theta type question, the type in the answer, where you have your para jumbles and things like that, where the answer is pretty unpredictable, right? So you or sentence completion, things like that. I think sentence completion probably was MCQ, so I used to do some of those para completions, and they'd set up the pace because the questions were easier to read. They were probably lesser in length, so you don't get hit with three paragraph long English content straight up. So that's one way you can tackle intimidation there. And then as your momentum builds up, as your eyes are sort of accustomed to reading longer and longer sentences, even thinking in English beyond what you could otherwise think of in maths and DILR, then you're more comfortable skimming through four passages and then figuring out which is the easiest passage. Out of those four, there's, from what I've observed from my PYQs, the previous year questions, solving thing, one passage almost is like a lollipop. It just comes straight to you and it's very easy to crack. And part of the exam also tests you to determine whether you're smart enough in figuring which is the easiest passage, right? So I'd say you want to figure that clean bowl, get all those four questions, and then perhaps there's one RC which is typically hard. There's the remaining two in my case were moderate to easy, moderate to hard. It's difficult to say. All right, it's slot by slot. It gets normalized later, but that's not in your hands. So you want to try and shuttle a bit. You want to figure out what works best. So one approach is you solve all the VA questions, let's say in maximum 12 to 15 minutes. Remaining 25 minutes, actually 20 minutes, yeah, yield it to how many of RCs. You don't have to solve them all. Just get through even two to three, sometimes sufficient without putting a number. But don't take my word for it. Sometimes all four passages are easy, so it's a matter of you exerting yourself smartly. Remaining 5 minutes, since I have an account, it's just 35 minutes that way. You want to spend time to go through your answers, but not too much, just to make sure you mark them, like the computer's registered. Don't overthink and change your options. Sometimes in VARC, what you've instinctively chosen first, depending on how comfortable you are with English, more often than not, that is the right answer. And then maybe 2 minutes to not do anything, maybe take a sip of water, unwind, because the next section will hit you, and apply the same logic, the remaining 2 minute buffer, the 5 minute or 2 minute buffer, at the end of the DILR section as well, so that you're ready for the math section. You don't want to be solving the question and then suddenly realize, okay, it's 39 minutes, 59 seconds up, and then the next second, you stop solving your VRC and now your pen starts to write DILR stuff. That rarely ever happens. The human mind needs to shift. So definitely try that. And yeah, I mean, that's about it. That's probably what worked in my favor at the time.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing about this VRC. Now, coming to DRR section, many students feel that logic does not come naturally to them or organically to them. So, how should they approach this DLR section if they feel stuck or low?
Okay, so I'll try and take it from my preparation time. I think a lot of friends have who I met at IIM, they've concurred with me in this, that DILR, for let's say for 30 days you're solving all the DILR questions you can get your hands on from Crackio, Arun Sharma, Career Launch, IMS, wherever. And for 29 days you're trying everything, and you're not getting the answers at all. You're taking not even 40 minutes for one set of five questions. You're actually taking 2 hours. Let's say it's a games and tournaments question or something, and you're just going about the seeding thing. I mean, seeding questions are typical, they come across. So if whoever's listening to this podcast can Google, yeah, feel free to. It was definitely stressful for me, but I'd taken 3 hours for my very first games and tournaments question. Obviously, that exceeded beyond class hours. So, I was gutted. And then I tried another question and then gutted again. I was able to only look at the solutions after 2.5 hours, not much of an improvement. But I think as the days progress, 29 days, they will feel like there's been zero progress. But trust me when I say this, on the 30th day, or maybe whatever other day, on one fine day, it will strike you, because suddenly your brain, I don't know what happens. It's difficult to explain it, even for me. Something just clicks in, all the wiring you've been developing within your brain for the past 29, 30 days or so, it clicks, and then you're able to solve that passage. Forget the time aspect, you're able to solve the passage. You don't even have to look at the solutions before solving it. So once you're done, you look at the solution, like, hang on, I've got two or three of these correct. And yeah, that's a very healthy sign of showing that you're able to get things accurately. And then obviously, as time progresses, you're able to push harder, and you're able to solve it within the time frame you allocate. So let's say, now coming to the paper bit, what advice was given to me was that I am Lucknow setting the paper for 2023, so it might be tough, and the DILR might also be pretty challenging. So realistically, if you solve one or two passages, you're good. You cross the 95 percentile mark. Some people won't even get most of those questions correct, even if they attempt to solve two passages. Sorry, two questions, two puzzle sets, right? Because typically the four appear. At least in mine, it was four, and there are 20 questions in all, four problem sets across different types of DILR questions, and then five for each, right? 4 into 5, 20. So I remember solving one set completely, and I said, "All right, fine, this is good." And then the next set, I proceeded, and by then my prep was so solid that I spent roughly 15 to 17 minutes in whole on the first set, and then again another 15 to 17 minutes on whole in the second set. So that sometimes that allows you to randomly attempt a few type in your answer the non-negative DILR questions from the other two sets as well, maybe taking educated guesses. Sometimes that allows you to just look at your answers and be like, all right, I've covered all bases. I don't think I've gone wrong in any of my workings. I'll just stick with my two sets, and I'm making sure that 10 out of 20 questions ultimately from the section are correct. And believe me, it's a lot of magic for a lot of people. You clear the cutoff for one, it adds to your raw score for another, and sometimes it's just a matter of pride for personal fulfillment, because preparing for that section was so cumbersome as compared to, let's say, VRC or CAT for the quant for most people. So yeah, I think that's something I could definitely recommend. This statement applies for uh, all sort of sections for that matter. Don't have to solve the entire paper. You've got 40 minutes. It's a paper of time management. So realistically, you're looking to target the easiest ones. You make sure they're 100% right. Then you go towards the moderate ones. Also make sure they're 100% right. You don't want negative markings on anything. But naturally, you'd be solving lesser of those moderate or hard questions in quantity as compared to the easy ones. So it's a matter of you applying your head and figuring out what's easy, what's hard, and filtering and choosing your targets.
Thank you so much for this section, sir. Now, coming to the last question, last section. So, it is used to be said that canned quant is like 10th grade maths. But recently, we have seen that tougher topics like high level algebra, some kind of differentiation, coordinate geometry, modern maths, and some kind of higher level questions also being included in the math section. So, how should the students from non maths background, the probably the somebody who has left maths after class 10th, approach this quant section?
I mean, again, a few heuristics, a few thumb rules. People have their own. What worked for me was from the very beginning, I'd just maintain a formula book for a start. Obviously, not the recommended approach, because I've seen people gain massive success on the final day of the exam simply through elimination, deduction, and thumb tricks or shortcuts, where they don't even work the entire sum out to get the answer. They just look at three options and they say, "Hang on, none of these seem viable, because this answer I should be getting based on my experience of solving such problems is that it should be a positive numeral." So none of those were positive or even zero, whatever else. So, I'm going to choose option D and get on with it. And they get it right, things like that. But usually that sort of confidence level is higher for engineers, I'd say, or people with like a strong maths background. But I think in my case, I'd start off with the formula book, assuming that I was an absolute, uh, you know, uh, absolutely new, an absolute novice at um, solving anything quant related, because I left it for quite a long time. Formula book aside from that, definitely just practice as many sums as you can initially. You want to get that feeling that you're going to get hit with very unpredictable types of questions, not just unpredictable formula related questions. You wouldn't even know which concept of maths that question might come from. So you need to think sometimes beyond, like if you really want to get beyond the 95 percentile for that section alone, you want to think beyond um, just your typical 10th grade maths, your 12th grade math formula, the way you've been taught to work out things for your board exams, because there's step marking and all that involved. You want to be able to capture some nuances within the question, read that thoroughly, try and visualize certain questions, especially in the case of geometry. That helps obviously a lot. Coordinate, you don't necessarily have to graph everything out. If by a ballpark amount you figure out that, okay, this lies in the first quadrant, second quadrant, this is closer to the origin by this much, this is further away by that much, and then this sort of a direction, maybe I'll use lines and angles and figure it out, rather than coordinate geometry formulae that we've been given, by default. So yeah, you have a couple of those tricks. In my case, I mean, practice formula notes, definitely mocks, because then that gives you that time pressure thing. And what's interesting about this section is that in my case, because I'd exhausted my mind frame time and again for VRC and DIL. My aptitude, my attitude towards the paper just changes by the time you get to the quant section. It requires you to refresh. If you're a non-engineer, you might find it difficult initially to even grasp what's going on. So definitely, again, try and come back to that first principle I mentioned, where your friend circle needs to be strong. And I'm pretty sure someone will have a great grasp on maths, and they'll be more than happy to give you some tricks of the trade and see how you can implement them. Otherwise, the old school method, if you prefer to self study, you want to spend time, solve as many questions, go through the solution. And once, if they're wrong, you want to try the solution working method. You want to also try a workaround in a lengthy format. But if it's correct, the solutions given to you say the same thing as what you've attempted. So now you want to solve the same question, but this time using a shortcut. You want to try and experiment around, so that when it comes in the paper, and if you're lucky, typically, some instructors tell you that these questions, the numbers change and then they just come as they are. uh, you're well set up for success in solving those questions correctly, but sometimes they're just not in your control, so you have to figure out some workarounds. You have to get them right first. And most of all, just like for the DILR section, you have to maintain a peace of mind. Otherwise, panicking more generally across all three sections, especially for the quant section, it's not going to help you.
Sir, before we conclude, one last piece of advice, a one-line advice you would like to give all the CAT aspirants, something that can truly make a difference in their journey.
Stay positive. Definitely is not the end of the world. I was fortunate enough, by God's grace, to get into the IIM, but obviously before that, I've faced failures in things I wanted to pursue, and that's always a part of life. There's no point getting feeling gutted about whatever didn't come your way. You have to pray for the best. Ultimately, you have to be good with those around you. I guess this advice sort of goes more into sort of a philanthropy, a more humanitarian direction. But this exam is going to teach you more about managing pressures. It's also going to teach you more about forging connections, which will help you solve problems. And it's a journey, and you shouldn't consider yourself alone in this. And at the same time, your support network needs to be strong. You need to really think beyond the paper, because you're going to be hit with business problems, which are no longer just streamlined as a cat question and answer sort of style. So how are you going to go into that board meeting with, uh, you know, the concept in mind? You got to think beyond that. You need to work on your personality while you're prepping for the cat, because when the shortlists come, and they will, and I pray they do, you're going to have very little time to actually work on whatever experiences you have. You're going to try and leverage any conversations around those. So you want to be absolute crisp from the very beginning that you want to do this MBA thing. You want to know what you're getting into, and then after that, you want to figure out the route to do so, which exams you have to give, and when you're supposed to register for them, when you're supposed to give those, and then what else is involved, and then all the resources you can enlist to sort of prepare adequately for that journey. So yeah, I mean, to keep it all short, just look at the bigger picture. Don't panic too much. It's not the end of the world. There's definitely more things lined up for you, if not this. But at the same time, it's a very rewarding journey to have been able to grind for this exam and clear it. There's a certain gratification in that. So yeah, I mean, just keep pushing at it, and all the very best, I'd say.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your insights today. Your journey and advice will surely inspire countless aspirants out there who are gearing up for the CAT journey. So, before we wrap up, I'd like to leave our listeners with a little something to ponder as they continue their preparation. In every test, a story grows of grit and dreams that no one knows. Chase the light, don't fear the fall, for courage within will conquer all. With that, we conclude today's episode. Thank you so much, sir, for lending your time, and thank you so much, viewers, for attending this podcast. Remember, the journey may seem tough, but every challenge is an opportunity to grow. Stay motivated, keep working hard, and best of luck to all the CAT aspirants out there. Until next time, this is Arpan signing off from the Skill Sapiens podcast. Stay motivated, stay happy. Thank you so much.